All right, so welcome everybody to District 4 Citizens Advisory Board. Today's agenda is Let's Talk Budgets. Call the meeting to order and take a quick roll of the CAB members. Let's just quickly check them off. Adam Bosworth, not here. Jamie Buster, not here. Ronald Colbert, in the back. Zach Day, not here. Okay, yeah, that's good. Maria Gonzalez, Mark Masterson, and then Philip Frazier. With that, we'll turn it over to Lacey Cruz for the welcome.
Sweet, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, come in, Gretchen. Hello, and welcome. So tonight we're going to be having some budget discussions. Lindsay is going to give an overview of the county budget with a few updates of the ones we did this last month in Park City, and this month we have a few updates because we've had some additional budget discussions. But as you can see right up here are the boards. So we did this one other time in Park City. We're going to do this in Mays, and we'll also do this. Hello, welcome. We were just getting started. Akeem will have a sign-in sheet that he's going to pass around, and so if everybody could sign in, that would be great. As you see up here, we have all of our categories of budgets. So we've had one of these discussions before, which is why you already see some dots on there. And this is really just a visualization of what you think is important. And you can put a dot on all of these. There's no limit of dots. You can put as many dots as you want on there. But it really is going to give us when we're done doing this. So we had Park City, now we're doing Valley Center, we're going to do Mays, and then we have one in Wichita as well. So we'll have 4 total of these, and so hopefully it'll give us a visualization. That's the idea. Maybe next time we'll make our boards a little smaller, since we haven't had a lot of dots so far. So maybe that's just to give us a visualization. So I'm going to call up Lindsay. She's going to go first, and then we'll have Barry with Valley Center give your guys' budget, and then we're going to have an interactive portion. So you'll see up here, as she just took it away, this minty.com, that's the code that you'll use, and then we're going to have an interactive portion toward the end of this. If you don't have access to a cell phone, we can get you some cards to fill out so that we can do both interactive and in person. So right now we're going to call up Lindsay Porizzo. She is our CFO, and she's going to give us a brief overview of the county budget and what we'll be looking at to adopt possibly.
So, hi everybody. For the folks who are at the Park City CAB, unfortunately this is going to look really familiar to you, but it is shortened, I promise. So you can thank Commissioner Cruz for that. So what we are going to talk about real quick today is just the breakout of the budget to kind of align with what you see up here in terms of the different categories. We'll talk about our financial forecast, and then we will get into kind of some of the issues that Sedgwick County is dealing with in its budget this year. So what you can see on this slide here is how our budget breaks out by function, and I don't think it would surprise anyone in this room to see that public safety is the greatest portion of that pie. Now, you'll see that general government is large too, but I would tell you that more than $20 million of that budget is in contingency. We don't necessarily plan to spend it. Unfortunately, last year, for the first time since I've been at Sedgwick County, we exhausted our entire contingency thanks to COVID-19 response. So that's abnormal though. So about 2/3 of this $490.4 million budget is supported through property tax supported funds. So not necessarily just property taxes, but through that funding source. Next one, please. So what you can see on this slide are the functions that are actually paid for, at least partially, with property tax dollars. And so you can see public safety is, again, the lion's share of this part of the budget. Public works is pretty significant. And then you can see, based on, aside from debt service, which no one likes to pick, right? There would be no dots on that. But that's the only category that is represented here that is not also here. So then on the next slide, so we talk about public safety and we talk about general government, but what does that mean? So these are the types of functions that are supported through property taxes. One thing that I think is interesting that I always like to point out is on community development. Wichita State University actually had a state statute when it became a state university that set 1.5 mils of revenue to go directly to WSU, and their board of trustees actually decides how that is spent. So Sedgwick, so that was City of Wichita. In the 80s, Sedgwick County and City of Wichita entered into an MOU so that instead of just getting roughly the 70% of City of Wichita property taxes, because it was a community and a regional school, it expanded to the entire county. So of our 29.4 mils that we talk about, 1.5 goes directly to WSU, and we have no discretion over how that is spent. So you can see quite a few services are funded with property taxes. Some of this is offset with sales and use taxes. Some of it is offset with charges for service or intergovernmental revenues. But there are a lot of things that get supported with that 29.4 mils. So, slide. So just real quick, when we talk about property taxes, it's always interesting to know about the group that you're collecting taxes from, right? So for District 4, Commissioner Cruz's district, these are just a few statistics that were gathered earlier this year just to kind of give a frame of reference for what our different parts of the community look like. So you can see on this slide, average household income in this district is about $50,000. The total population, of course, we just went through redistricting, so it's about 104,000 for everybody. 151 square miles, so a pretty dense part of the county when you consider that we're over 1,000 square miles. You can see the assessed property value, so not the appraised, just the assessed, what we would actually tax against, is just under $1 billion. And then we have 19% overall. So a pretty fair split in terms of that. But again, it's pretty interesting how dense this district is. Next slide, please. So one of the things just to talk through really quick is just a little bit of a lay of the land. Everybody always wants to know what happens after the Great Recession. We all know that it was unprecedented. We thought we had a chart, and then we didn't. And so we just were finally hitting our prime, right? And then we had the 737 MAX, and then COVID, and now who knows what's coming. So never boring. So in those property tax supported funds, you can see here that our actual expenses are up 21% from 2008 to 2021. The tax levy has increased 24%, but what you can see is that neither of those has kept up with inflation. And this is not even talking about 2022 yet, right, when the whole world went south. This talks only about through calendar year 2021. At the same time, there are some encouraging statistics, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it. So average home value has increased 41% in that time. Personal income, Sedgwick County-wide, has gone up 42%. So we do a calculation that helps us give a frame of reference for how we know how well we're doing and how fiscally responsible we are able to be. And that's called price of government. And so what that does is it takes the amount of revenues coming in from citizens, so it excludes any governmental money, so CARES and ARPA and all that stuff we've talked about is not included in that calculation. And it puts that within context of personal income. So what you can see here is that from 2008 to now, we are at 0.84 cents, so less than a penny paid per dollar of personal income in the county towards government. And what that also tells us is not just are we being fiscally responsible, it also tells us there is a happy medium where you're not overtaxing citizens, but you're able to provide the amount of service that they want. And then sometimes they can pay too much and they're mad, or they don't pay, or they're not getting enough service and they're mad. So it's kind of this constant evaluation to figure out where we are. And so another interesting part, and I'm sure this is true for everybody in this room, but in 2008, our reliance on property taxes to fund the overall Sedgwick County budget was only 51%. Since that time, in 2021, our reliance was up to 57%. And that is a big increase. And a lot of that is driven by, can we go to the next slide, please? What we have seen by virtue of a lot of actions taken at the state level. And so what you can see on this slide are just some highlights of those actions. If you were here last time, you got like 3 full slides of this preachiness. This is all on one slide this time. So we operate 16 programs, or have operated in that period of time, 16 programs on behalf of the state. So that includes everything from aging to just collecting taxes. As a county, we're a political subdivision of the state. So we're not like a city. We don't have or enjoy the same home rule authority. We're pretty well bound by the rules they set for us. So in those programs, our expenditures have remained mostly flat, but in that same time, state aid to help support those programs has decreased 24%, and Medicaid revenue for those programs has decreased 46%. So what that means, and this is the driver for that property tax reliance we saw on the last slide, what that means is taxpayers are now, local taxpayers, are now paying more for state programs, and the state is offering less subsidy for that. Now, of course, there have been a number of other state actions, and if anybody wants to get into the details, I'll be happy to do that, but I don't want to bore the room silly. But really, since that time, since 2008, between a combination of funding that the state hasn't received or hasn't provided, as well as actions they have taken to eliminate the mortgage registration fee, that has actually cost Sedgwick County more than $500 million in 13 years. $500 million, that's our entire budget plus some. So that is a staggering statistic. And when you think that our local taxpayers have picked this up and services are continuing to be provided, that's a pretty amazing statistic in my opinion. So if we can go to the, oh yes ma'am.
Will you go back one slide? So due to other state actions, so can you talk about, give an example of what those state actions
Okay.
are?
So the most popular one that everybody talks about if you go across the state is the local ad valorem tax reduction. So it's LAVTR, and what it was is the state was going to take a portion of certain taxes that the county received and keep that for themselves. It would not be distributed. And then they would give us other money, a portion of their state sales tax that would help offset programs. And what it was intended to do was to try to keep property taxes, ad valorem taxes, low across the state. And it was funded for a few years, and then we hit bad times after 9/11, and those actions were felt. It took a few years. It always takes a few years to get here, but they quit funding it. So it's technically still on the books, but they haven't funded it since, I think, 2006 is the last time we received a payment. And so those types of actions where Sedgwick County, other counties relied on this revenue source from the state, and then that goes away, well, then your governing bodies have to figure out how to make up that difference, right, and continue to provide services. So that's one example. And then, like I said, the mortgage registration fee was a fee that was paid on the value of the mortgages that were filed. We just had a $1 billion mortgage filed last year, and instead of looking at that value, which for $1 billion, chump change, right? We instead got $2 a page for the mortgage that was filed. And so significant revenue loss there. Not that the state took the money away from us, right? But they did prevent us from being able to receive that fee. And so they phased that out over 5 years, starting in 2014, and now what we get is that per page fee. So is that what you were after? Okay. All right, so next slide, please. So as we talk about all of these changes and all of these things that have happened through budget cycles since 2008, really, a lot of that has been done at the expense of employees. We've kept a flat mill levy rate. We've tried to be very prudent and fiscally responsible. That's great. We have a AAA credit rating. But the problem is we haven't kept up with what our employees need. And so this slide illustrates, and this, let me point out that 2022, the commission actually took some pretty significant action. 1,600 of our roughly 2,400 filled positions were reclassified based on the work that they do. So they weren't given market adjustments or anything like that. It was just we updated their job descriptions and paid them based on our current pay grades, what they were entitled to. So if you look at 2008, you can see our average salary, and you can see that to 2022, that amount went up 22%. But capers went up, that comes out of employees' paychecks. Health insurance costs went up, that come out of employees' paychecks. Now, not as much as some, we're lucky on that regard, but what that means is the take-home pay for folks has increased less than 20%. And we talked before that inflation is 27%. So we have not kept up with inflation for our employees. And now, unfortunately, as I'm sure you have seen in the news, we are paying the price for that. We are down dozens, hundreds of positions in some parts of the organization, to the point that I know we just talked about it at the last DAB, but juvenile residential, which is an alternative program for kids to go through that keeps them in the community, does more rehabilitative services with them, had to close because we didn't have enough staff. And so now those kids are being put in a jumpsuit and go to the juvenile detention facility, where they're policed 24/7. They're not out in their communities going to their own school. And so it's just a really unfortunate consequence. Part of the problem is the state is having the exact same problem. They were losing corrections workers like crazy. We heard about El Dorado having to go into critical status, right? So they raised their wages. Well, there go all of our people. So it's just created some real challenges for us, and that is why what you will hear for the rest of this presentation is compensation, compensation, compensation. We got to do what we can to try and keep the people we have so that institutional knowledge doesn't walk out the door. And we've got to start trying to recruit people to come in and fill these jobs so we can provide the level of service that citizens expect. So if we can look at this next slide, I just want to distinguish, when we talk about financial forecast, we're talking about what we really think will happen. Whereas the budget is a spending plan, it's a limit. We always joke it's not your target, right? Like, you don't want to spend every penny of your budget. So the forecast is a living, breathing document. We update it at least quarterly, and it tells us what we really think will happen, especially in our county property tax supported funds for the current year and 5 years into the future. So if we can go to the next slide, please. What you can see on this next slide is what we have included in the financial forecast. There we go. Okay, so you're good. So with what the commission saw in May, when we start our budget hearings, every department comes in front of the county commission and talks about their needs, challenges, and all of that as a part of their budget discussion. So what we had included at that time was one of the most significant pay pools I've really ever seen the county do. And that is an 8% increase effective January 1. And then 4% in the years after that. And as we all got the bad news earlier this week, instead of inflation going down, which is what the economists had expected, it actually went up. It went up to 8.6% through May. So this 8% here doesn't even keep us level with inflation, let alone digging into that number that we talked about in terms of where employees have been historically relative to inflation. So that's the most significant part of our forecast and our upcoming budget, just because we know how critical it is. So you can see the other things that are included in the forecast are capital improvement. We have some other specialized things that carried forward from 2021 projects that weren't completed because of supply chain issues. So that got carried forward. Of course, we have a 27th pay period this year, which is always exciting. So that's a little more than $5 million that we have going out the door this year. We have some radios, and then a couple years ago, the commission took action to streamline our technology purchases so that they weren't all just coming randomly from different departments. And so we've got some funding in for that. So what does that actually mean then? What's the bottom line? This is the bottom line. This is my favorite KU slide. So red, revenues, blue, expenditures. What you can see is we are just a little bit exceeding revenues with our expenses. But remember, there's an 8% pay pool in next year's budget. So to me, this is actually remarkable that it's not worse than this. So then let's put this in context. If we can go to the next slide, please. So Sedgwick County has a fund balance policy. And what it says is that in our county general fund, which supports more than 40 departments, we have to maintain at least 20% of our adopted general fund budget each year. And then the rest of that, we can kind of spend some of it. There's a few more restrictions. But what this tries to illustrate is the black line is 20%, what we think. Obviously, we haven't adopted a budget for 2023 or beyond, but this is what we think the budget will look like in those years. And the blue is the fund balance relative to that. So as long as we stay above the black line, we're good. So when you saw that forecast with the red and blue and the gap, we're still doing very well. This is a very different picture than what we talked about in 2011 when we thought we were going to be insolvent. And so that led us to cutting $20 million in recurring expenses, more than 170 positions out of the budget. So this is a much better picture. It's not nearly as bleak as it may seem based on the slide before. So we are right dead smack in the middle of our busiest time from the budget office side. Wednesday. Today is Monday. Sorry. It's just been too exciting this week already. So Wednesday, right? So Wednesday, the county manager has to make all of his decisions for what he will present in his recommended budget. And then once all of that gets done, we have a lovely 800-page budget book. I encourage you all to take a look through it if you haven't sometime. It's a lot of work by that budget office. But that will be presented on July 13th. Of course, you all, I'm sure, are aware of the new state law about revenue neutral rates instead of property tax lids. So we will actually have to have a special action also on the 13th, the day that the manager recommends that budget, for the commission to adopt a resolution, which they've never had to do before. On August 4th, we are planning at this time, unless the commission tells us otherwise, we are planning for an evening hearing at the courthouse. And then on August 24th, because the way the state law works now with the revenue neutral rate, you have to have a hearing, and the commission has to actually approve a property tax levy. So they will do that the same day they're going to adopt the budget. So we will have that revenue neutral rate / public budget hearing on the morning of the 24th, and then immediately thereafter adopt the budget. Between now and then, that is an awfully long window from July 13th to August 24th. There's an awful lot of time for good ideas and bad ideas to pop up. So we'll be spending a lot of time, I am confident, working through different issues that may pop up in that time, because the recommended budget is just a recommendation. Nothing is final until the commission adopts it. So that is the information I have for the county. Do you want me to go through the task force one, or do you want to do that?
Do you guys have any questions about this? I would love to hear your questions. Gretchen, you have a question back there. I know you do.
So a number of us are here from our congregation that's very concerned about funding for ICT-1.
Sure.
Which is, for those of you who may not know, ICT-1 is a program that started in 2019, I think, which set a way to handle mental health crises that are phoned into 911 by dispatching an EMS person, a person say, you know, whatever way possible, can we get the funding to enhance the possibility people go and work in that program, because Congress is down 20 positions right now.
220 positions. 200. Yes. Yes, I mean, it is, crisis is the right word.
And we had talked, we had met with some commissioners, and we talked about the possibility of working out a way for, like, students at WSU who it's a very popular major, to the pre-med major, but why couldn't we try to find ways to kind of do, get some incentives? And one member of our committee is just working at WSU, is faculty member there in sciences, and thought you could probably do something to promote that. To get incentives for students to think about not just med school, but to be doing this kind of EMS service to the community. Because we know when somebody goes out on a crisis call, and they have no training dealing with mental health cases, they react inappropriately, and sometimes lives are lost.
Well,
I just really are here to kind of say that it's really important. We appreciate what the commission is doing, and we appreciate that 8% increase in salary for next year. And we understand, and we feel your pain as we look at inflation and see that's losing money down and down. So I guess if there's a question, what do you, looking at this from inside, what do you see the public being able to do to help?
so that's a really good question, and I will turn it over to Commissioner Cruz, but I'll give you two pieces of information that might be helpful in terms of educating others. First is that when we talk about 8%, that's the general pool. ComCare recently transitioned from mental health, basically a community mental health center, to also being a community-based, CCBHC, community Christ, I don't know. Basically, it's a different funding model. So instead of getting paid very minimal dollars per service, they're on a different model now where they get reimbursed much more, like way, way more. So we are working with, HR is working with ComCare now to try and actually come up with something that's more market competitive, more so than even the 8%. Because that 8% is happening in our property tax funds, but ComCare makes revenue. And so they can have kind of their own staffing table, same thing with corrections. There's just a little bit of a different way to look at that. So we are evaluating that. The second thing I would tell you is that for ComCare, we have some other recommendations that'll be coming up. And I think in what Commissioner Cruz covers about how there have been some recommendations from the community related to the task force that was done in response to the Sedgwick Lofton case. And so there are some alternative ideas in there. As always, voicing your support for those to commissioners or getting others, I think, is always the most effective way that I've seen. So with that, I will shut up and let Commissioner Cruz talk.
My name is Mike Coach. I'm a retired pastor, which is served for 18 years in the neighborhood just south of Wichita State University. And a couple of things I know maybe this doesn't apply to the Valley Center, to this part of the district. But there were numerous times when, and speaking in favor of ICT1, there were numerous times when I was faced with issues, or our congregation was faced with issues that where it was a 911 call and there was only the police showed up. So the ICT1 concept is really important. And we tried to do this years ago, actually, when we were doing community policing in the early 90s. And we were trying to do more coalition work and combining resources. And the whole idea was reducing public fear, increasing
for that.
Thank you. And I know we're down to the nitty-gritty, obviously, of the budget process. So, one thing that I was thinking about was that if we're down 200 positions or over 200 positions in ComCare, and I used to call ComCare a lot, they would come out, they did a good job with the limited resources. So I'm a fan of ComCare. I'm sorry to see that they're in such dire straits. Also considering the wild and crazy, Wild West gun culture that we have around us, we need something that goes beyond the gun. It goes into compassionate mental health awareness and treatment, especially for 17-year-olds or 13-year-olds. I did too many funerals for 13 and 14-year-olds who were shot in the face because they were in the way. Yeah. And they needed psychiatric help. So one suggestion that I have, and then I'll sit down, is that if there are over 200 positions in ComCare that are not funded, is it possible to prioritize that hiring process to put in ICT 1 funding, which would involve a social worker, a mental health worker, and a police officer, right?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different models that we can look at. That's the one model that we implemented based off of Colorado Springs model. So it's called a co-responder model. It's a team that sort of triages the calls. And the reason why it's important to cities like Valley Center and Park City and Mays is because all of the money that we're spending on public safety, if we were able to reduce the number that we're spending just to maintain the system and put it on the front end, then we could have more funds to do construction projects and building the infrastructure and being a good partner to our neighbors up north, like we've done before with the roundabout and some other things that we're working on, right? So that's really how it translates. I mean, if we're not spending so much money to maintain the system that really isn't working, because it's not, I mean, it's functioning, right? But we're not reducing our recidivism rates. We're not reducing the number of people in our jails. We're not reducing the number of people who are suffering from mental illness and substance misuse on our streets, which manifests into our unhoused population. Like all of those funds that we're spending just to maintain, and I like to say it's keeping that revolving door just spinning on the axis, right? It's just greasing it. And so that's kind of how we have to really rethink. And so I think there's a lot of questions, and really we're not going to solve anything tonight. And quite frankly, when it comes to mental health and substance misuse and homelessness, there are cities around the nation that have, quote unquote, solved homelessness. When it comes to veterans, right? It's one in, one out, really. You don't really solve it though, right? It's when someone enters homelessness, they're immediately housed because their system has been working out. So we're not really going to solve it. I wish we could, but we can reduce the number of people suffering. And programs like a co-responder like ICT-1, which I'd be interested to hear how many people call 911 from Valley Center. I don't know if you guys have public safety numbers around that and how, because I haven't really. I would like to see that. And like how many people do call in crisis, and how many people do from Valley Center utilize those services. That would be interesting to know. But those co-responder models are really a community-based model, right? They go to the person, and it is better care for sure. So can we flip real quickly, and then I want to get to Valley Center because I really want to hear what their budget is. Oh, did you go to do you have the Sedgwick Lofton? Yeah. So the other things that weren't in here, and thank you for paring that down, and I will be really quickly, is the Lofton Task Force, which talks about. We're not going to go through this whole thing. Okay. So just flip through. Go back. These are all the things that they've asked for, right? 27 mobile mental health, which is, okay, go to the next slide. Develop a 27 mobile mental, that's what you're talking about. That's ICT-1, right? Qualified mental health providers within our 911 system.
Did you say that once
So the 27 mobile health, it's mobile mental health. It's ICT1, it's a behavioral health unit, it's a co-responder model. Those are all the same thing, right? Go to the person who needs the help. That's what they'd like for us to fund, which I totally support. And then some other things, which I can give this to you, Gretchen, if you want this PowerPoint. I'll send it to you. So go scroll to the next one. Improve pay, increase mental health professionals, next. Continuing education coordinator, we need that in every single bit of our county. I mean, we really are operating with such just a maintained system. Like, we have to be innovative. We talk about all the other business practices and everything that we do. We're in 2022. We have to be innovative. We have to think outside the box because our current system is not really doing anything besides maintaining, and I just keep repeating myself. So these are some other things. The implicit bias training. I mean, all of us have that. When's the last time we really thought about like just how we're growing up and how it affects us and the things that, we might not even, our thoughts, like how we grew up affects how we treat other people. And we'll get into that, but we all could stand to have that kind of training. Okay, next. Nursing at JIAC and JDF. The thing that's really sad is that our juvenile residential facility, those kids, they need to be treated as, they're not incarcerated, right? They need to be in the community. Okay, next. The video system was on the back page, and then next. Next. So that's the summary of it again. And then this is the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Coalition Task Force, which I serve on. Are you raising your hand? Oh, you're trying to see it. Okay, so go to the next page. Oh, it doesn't break it down, does it? Okay, so I'll send this out to you because I know it is hard to read. So I'll send this out to you, those of you that are interested. But these are additional requests to the budget that we've already talked about, right? Those things haven't really been put into the budget yet. So hopefully the manager will bring some of these recommendations back. And one thing that you didn't see on here is Meals on Wheels, right? We've had a $200,000 ask for the Meals on Wheels program. We've also had a $125,000 ask for Humankind, which 4 out of 5 commissioners, I being the one that did support it, was our systems are connected. Humankind is operating a permanent supportive shelter, which is a apartment complex, really, and it has a 90% success rate across the country. But we should start funding those kinds of things, those kinds of prevention efforts. And then lastly, I just want to talk about our fund balance, right? And when we talk about the deficit spending, which I have to, there's all these buzzwords in government, right? You got all sorts of buzzwords, especially those public servants that try to buzzword each other on the other side, right? But right now, this is community services. This shouldn't be Democrat, Republican. It should be community-based services and how we're going to fund them, because every single person who lives in our community deserves this service. Doesn't matter if you're Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, it doesn't matter who you are and then what kind of money you make or what kind of ticket you vote with, right? It doesn't matter. So we have a 38%. So if we have to keep 20% of our fund balance, right, we have to keep 20% in the coffers to make sure that we can cover everything that we need to cover. Am I saying this right? So I'm trying to break it down because government should be simple, it should be effective, and it should cost less. And when we talk about the amount of money that we have to keep for our rainy day fund, I'm going to call it, because that's really what it is. Our rainy day fund, 20%. Well, we're at 38%. What if we took 1% of that, which is $380,000, based off of last year's budget? Could we put that into services like the Humankind Ask that does have a 90% success rate with their permanent supportive housing program? That's the kind of things that I'm talking about. Slowly and incrementally shifting to prevention services. Because for every $1 you spend on prevention services, you get $4 in return. What business person doesn't want to see a return on investment like that? And I know that this is government and we shouldn't operate exactly like a business, but in some parts we should. We should expect for the services that we provide to provide better outcomes than they are, because right now that's not what we're focused on. So I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna invite our friends from Valley Center, Mr. Barry Smith and Matt Cohen, to come up here. I don't know who's talking. Which one? Okay, so Barry, I believe, he is going to talk to us about the Valley Center budget, which I'm pretty excited about.
Can the mayor say a couple words?
Yeah, that's right. Mayor Cicerello, Lou Cicerello.
Do you really need a mic?
You're on fire.
That's my favorite line. We never fire him, trust me. I just want to say, what you're about to see, you'll find that it really parallels what you just heard. Okay? It really doesn't matter what level of government you're at, from the cities, the county, the state, the federal, we should talk about that. But, budgeting is priority, top priority of any big government. Like I said, the federal government somehow lost track of that. So, but you see in the news, you see that, the state, they have to do that. County has to do it, we have to do it. And the items you see here are pretty much the same across the board. It's just how does each government deal with it? And of course, our numbers are a lot lower than the county's numbers are. Excuse me. What I find interesting is as the government increases in size, so does the bureaucracy. And as Commissioner Cruz said, there are certain things that there should be no bureaucracy. There should be no party lines. There should be, this is part of what we do. I mean, I feel sorry for all the people that get into situations where they can't get somebody from the social services to talk to them first, and they end up with the police department, who is not, they're not trained. We all know that. This is no big secret anymore. Yet there seems to be a push now to start dealing with that, which should have been a push 20-some years ago. And hopefully this will all come together. But I'm going to go ahead and let Barry do his thing here. But you'll see that the very much of the commonalities between the county budget and our budget and how that works.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lacey, for inviting us out tonight. Thank you, Lindsay, for presenting. Mayor Cicerello just showed me this cool dashboard that Sedgwick County puts together on the EMS site, and it is broken out by city. So I just pulled up Valley Center real quick. So this is the calls from EMS to Valley Center. I just didn't see an option to break it out by the ICT1 option, but thought this is pretty neat. These dashboards are really nice. It gives you a quick visual of what's going on. It's a good way to present data and tell your story. So with that, we'll jump in our budget here. So for Valley Center and going over our demographics, we're about 7,400 people. That increased slightly with the last census, not a whole lot, but we have a whole lot of developments going on right now. So we're looking at potentially, a 20 to 25% population increase over the next 5 to 10 years, probably, once all these developments final out. Our median household income here is around $75,000, and average household $90,000, and median home value about $188,000. So we're right there in the middle there. So our budget process, as Lindsay kind of described, it's pretty similar. Some slight differences between city and counties, but for this year in March, we distributed all of our budget worksheets to department heads. At that point, I basically tell them, write down your wish list, bring it back to me, and then we'll go through it. So in April, they turn those in. Then during the month of May, we sit down with Brent, our city administrator, Matt, our city treasurer, and myself, go through those requests, see what's feasible, see if we can generate more ideas, what could we do differently, et cetera. Then in June, which I'm doing right now, is creating our first draft of our budget. We will then present that next Tuesday night at our council meeting. And once that first draft is presented, that's when we get feedback from council on our decisions, kind of get their temperature on everything, any decisions they make to change anything, any ideas they come up with for different requests, et cetera. We take those back, rework them in the budget. Through July, we refine that budget, and then in August to September, we adopt the budget with the new revenue neutral rate hearing and budget hearings, which we plan to have that hearing every year just as a safeguard, but we will always have this at the same time there in September. So for the 23 budget, we just received our evaluation last week. Our final 2021 valuation was 59 million. Our 22 estimated was 63 million, which gives us an increase of about 7.2% for this fiscal year. So how that breaks down is once you go through the revenue neutral rate calculation, it's basically you take the amount of taxes you levied the year prior and apply that to your new valuation, which gives you the new mill rate that you need to levy the same amount of taxes as the year prior. So that's what that revenue neutral rate does. It's a mechanism to bring that mill rate down, but as we all know, costs just don't stop. They don't ever go down. Personnel, pay, inflation, everything else. So how we approach the budget is when we present that first draft, we utilize the same mill rate we used the year previous. That gives us our cap, essentially, and for next year, that'll generate an additional $236,000 in ad valorem taxes, property taxes. So we'll take those dollars to council with all the budget requests in it, get their feedback, and make decisions moving forward from there. So our focus points for the budget, we recently adopted our strategic plan. In 21, it was going to be in 2020, then COVID hit, so we had to delay everything. So we finally got around to that in 21. So our strategic plan, like the county, I like to use Power BI as well. Is that not working? Why isn't that working? Okay, hold on 1 second. No, that's not it. We'll do that. There it is. Okay, so I basically took our strategic plan. They generated it. We interacted with the community, set up sessions to get feedback. They generated a PDF plan, and I don't know if anyone here sat down and read a PDF plan of a strategic plan lately in their free time. That's 30 to 50 pages of a lot of information. So what we try to do is we make things more interactive. We want to engage the community more, give out those quick links, people can click on it and fly through it. So these are kind of our 5 pillars. We have community spaces, listen and engage, housing, efficient public facilities, and economic development. So within the strategic plan, you can click through it. It'll bring up the goal. It sets out each objective, each strategy, and the action items we have to complete to meet our strategic plan. So you can go in through here and click an action item. So one of our big things here is we want to get a water treatment plant up and going. So within the strategic plan, we set an action item goal of completing a water treatment plant study. So when you click on the study, the little box in the bottom changes, click for the final result. You can click that and it pops up, showing everybody in our community the progress we're making, like we're following the plan, we're getting things done. So there's all sorts of things you can explore through here. The entire plan's set up this way. There's metrics, performance measures built in. You can go, let's see, return here. For example, listen and engage. One of the things we really wanted to look at was ways we communicated with the community during COVID. So we wanted to evaluate those and make sure we're following those. So once you click on the metric, it brings up these performance measures. How many website visits, how many Facebook likes, how many shares, how many app downloads, how we're interacting with the community through the app, push notifications, et cetera. So we're tracking that data, we're making those performance measures noted, we're integrating those into our budget books to make sure, hey, do we need to focus more resources here? We can focus more resources here. Do we need to do more mailers, more electronic media, everything like that? So that's our process through our strategic planning here.
What is that called?
So that's Power BI. It's the same thing as the EMS dashboard.
Oh, right.
So the CIP plan.
Not using it the same way. It doesn't look like.
Yeah, there's
Awesome. Yeah.
hundreds of different ways you can use that program. And it's only $10 a month, so it's really cool. It is a steal.
Probably charge governments more, right?
No, $10. $10. Yeah.
Budget for that?
Yeah. So another one of our focus points is ARPA. We received about a little over $1.1 million in ARPA funding. We want to use these for those big one-time purchases that really make an impact on the budget. That way we don't have to ever dream about increasing that mill rate. So we received our first tranche last year. I think we just received our second tranche this year. Matt loves that word, tranche. It's become a buzzword as well. when the final rule came out last April, that really helped us because our total allocation was under 10 million. So we can then apply that completely to general government services, and it really broadens the use of those funds for us. But we're still focusing on those one-time uses to make that big impact. And like the county, we decided to go with radios for the fire department, and also police car and body cameras. We got word from the company that does our current cameras, they're phasing them out, they're not making them anymore, so it was a good time to do that, to create a minimal impact on the budget. So like I said earlier, we have a lot of new residential developments going on. This is also a focus because along with development becomes growth, infrastructure, streets, water, sewer, stormwater, et cetera. We have it linked here to our website, has each new subdivision on there, all the layouts, where they're at in town, everything like that. So along with all the new developments, we want to focus on infrastructure as well, which involves our capital improvement plan. So this is our capital improvement plan dashboard here. Full size here. So here we have our current, oh dang it, did it again.
Remember, it's only $10 a month.
Yep. Yeah, that's good stuff. So we have all of our current projects and completed projects. For example, here are our current projects. I don't know if you were driving in town, you saw our water tower. It's completely blank right now. So was it last year we did that, the whole community engagement part? So we reached out, we got designs from the high school, a local business in town, a local business from Wichita, generated some ideas for the water tower. So it's a cool community engagement piece. Well, this design won out. So we are the Valley Center Hornets with USD 262. So there'll be a giant honeycomb pattern with the Hornet and Valley Center across the water tower, which is in progress right now. So on this dashboard, it incorporates our community engagement piece over here. This is our Facebook post announcing it. There's a little dashboard on the side there showing the vote total. We received over 1,400 votes for this design here. This dashboard shows your start dates, end dates, your total share of the costs, total funding, and then your budget to actuals down here, which more metrics incorporated. As we approach our budget thresholds here, those dots will change colors. That way that snapshot view, hey, we're getting close. We need to take a look at it, check it out. Make sure we're not doing anything crazy.
That's a really easy way, I think, for people to understand it too.
Right.
It's kind of simple.
So and it's super easy to share on Facebook. It just gives you that snapshot view. Hey, there's the little, we're 25% done, everything's green, going great, doing well. So this is our 4th Street project. As Commissioner Cruz mentioned earlier, we did receive a grant from the state, from KDOT. That grant totaled $3.5 million total that we split between us and Park City, Sedgwick County. The VC share of that grant was $2.7 million. And then our city portion for our costs around 2.8. And just shows where it's at in town and everything there. And if you're not from here, you can always take a virtual tour of the CIP as well. So you can literally fly through town where each project is. Over here on the side, it'll show you the cost, the operating impacts, when it's supposed to start, everything there.
Where's the Metro Airport?
Metro Airport? Oh, well, you can, right here. There's the airport right there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if you don't know where a project is, or if you want to see what's happening next to your house, you can come on here, find your address, fly through here and get all the information.
Where we're at right here, right now.
Yeah. So here's Lions Park. Here's the building we're at right now. Google Earth is kind of old. Their aerial shots kind of old sometimes, but yes, we are right here, right now. And this is this side of our potential pool and rec center may be here recently. But as you see outside here, that pool will go through a major renovation and everything here coming up pretty soon.
That is so cool.
So we like to create a more engaging piece, gets easy feedback, rather than looking at a giant spreadsheet. Now, I love looking at spreadsheets, I'm not gonna lie, numbers guy, but this makes it, a lot, it's fun. It's fun to do that, so, yeah. Back through here. So debt. So another one of the focus points, along with all the growth, is debt. So we want to make sure we're staying sustainable in our bond and interest fund. We have a fund specifically for making debt service payments. We have our own mill levy for that fund, and our goal here is to keep that mill levy flat over time. And with the way we've kind of revamped how we issue debt and pay for debt, that mill levy is scheduled to stay flat over the next 20 years. So we will not need to increase that mill levy to pay debt for at least 20 years. So how we do that is grants. We started utilizing more of our special streets, gas taxes, and sales taxes to pay more cash up front. Right now we have a debt policy draft that's being created. We need to put that in front of council for adoption, but that basically lays this out as well as other benchmarks we want to hit when it comes to debt. So speaking of grants, got 2.7 for Ford Street. We got 500,000 from Sedgwick County as an in-kind donation for inspection services. So thank you very much. It saved us that much money on the Ford Street project with you guys providing the inspections on that. North Meridian, South Meridian, Wampar projects, 3.9 there. Just recently announced was a syndicate cost share through KDOT. We got $1 million for that one. We replaced our entire inventory of our fire department air packs through FEMA for that grant there. And then we got a grant for our police radios to replace all those. So this is 20 to 22 for fiscal year 23 and beyond. The answer is yes, we will apply and hopefully get more grants. But just in these past couple of years, we've got about 11.5 million. So this is really helping us out within the city, get all these projects done at an economical cost. So for challenges is just growth. We want to grow smart. Eventually have to revamp our comprehensive plan. That'll give us a guideline, a map for the next 15 to 20 years. We want to grow smart. Once again, personnel, public safety, police, fire, public works, water, sewer personnel. And then with that, we also want to maintain our quality services. So just like Sedgwick County, we also have a challenge with personnel as well, and that first one's pay. It's hard to keep up right now, and especially in the governmental sector, it's like we're poaching people from each other. Like we specialize in our things, and we just poach and poach here, and then we lose some, and it's an never-ending struggle. So with that, we want to focus on pay, recruitment, retention, and then benefits. So last year, we switched from KPERS to KP&F for public safety. That was a huge draw for maintaining our tenured staff, and also is a huge recruitment tool moving forward. So that's kind of the theme of this year's budget, is just personnel, pay, adjusting those salary ranges, and adding some additional employees to our city. So that's kind of the high-level overview. Any questions?
How many employees do you have?
Around 50. Yeah, not a whole lot.
We'll leave to the management account.
Any other questions?
And no, you cannot steal them. Don't think about it.
Well, if there's no questions, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
So,
Pleasure's
I don't
mine.
know if
Okay.
we're able to do our interactive portion. Okay, great. So now, we're just gonna ask really simple questions. So get out your phones if you have them and want to participate. It should be pretty simple. If you want to use, do we have the opportunity for the paper? Who would like to do it via paper? Anybody? 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 Okay. So, these are really simple questions. We're gonna do this. So the first question is, yeah, go to minty.com and use that code. So I'll go ahead and do it too. Make sure the phone's in their hands. Here we go. And it says, and this is just kind of to gauge, yeah.
Sure, is this valley sensor oriented, or is it not?
Well, this is just, how much do you know about budgets? This is a very, so you know a lot, right? How much did you know about budgets? We'll just take the word county out of it. How much do you know about government budgets? Let's say government budgets, not your own personal budget, right? We hope that you have your own personal budget down. So we have 3 answers. I'm going to do it too, so. Minty dot. And before I started as a commissioner, I knew nothing about county budgets. I'm going to be the first to admit it. And now I know a lot. I don't know everything like Lindsay does, but I know quite a bit. Okay, so let me do this myself. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Are we going next? Next one? Next question, please. What word comes to mind when you think of budgets? What word does no word come to mind? So some of the words on your sheets over here, you know, when you look at the PowerPoint presentation, we have capital expenditures, we have all sorts of bond and interest, services, income, right? All those kinds of taxes, right? All those kinds of words that kind of come to spreadsheets. Yes, exactly. Great. This is where it kind of gets funny because, you know, people don't, this is anonymous. We don't know what you're going to say, so. It is a puzzle. You're right. It's painful. Yes, right. Underserved, exactly. Yeah, effective. We need to have effective budgets. You're right. That's exactly. You guys ready to move on? You want to keep going? Yeah, you want to move on? Okay, move on. Next one. What are your top wishes for public safety? When you think of public safety and in the public safety realm, where's that microphone at? So according to this sheet over here, we have the Office of the Medical Director, which is the regulation type things for EMS. We have emergency communication 911 services, emergency management, like our tornado and all of our weather and all of that kind of management. Fire district, regional forensic science center. You know, you'd be surprised at all the things that they do there from the region itself. So we pay for that here. Department of Corrections, the Sheriff's Office, District Attorney, 18 Judicial Court, the Crime Prevention Fund, MABCD, which is kind of, I get that under public safety, but anyway, the Courthouse Police. Yeah, mental health, yeah, for sure. Actually, I'll just stay here because we have the other things. Yeah, when I think of public safety, I think of CompCare. I think of public health, and CompCare usually is put in the public health bucket, but it is a public safety wing. And I truly believe that if we thought about that more, as far as a public safety component, maybe it would get more dollars, right?
I've got a question on the gun safety law. Does the county have to? I have a question on the gun laws. Does the county can the county override, can the county set up laws that are more stringent than state laws and federal laws?
I don't believe so. I don't
You cannot, you cannot go stricter than the chain above you. You can go more lenient, but you can't go stricter.
Not in every case.
Not in this situation, it's clear you can't.
Yeah.
It's a home rule, right?
Right.
In the early 90s, in Wichita, we did implement public referendum. We had implemented a handgun safety law, and 76% of the city voted in favor of that. So that's before that's when we had one.
Yeah, that's a good question. One that we can ask our legal team, because quite frankly, I'm not real sure to give you a really 100% answer. So I'm happy to follow up on that. Okay, so here's our list for public safety. I think we have next, we have public health. And your answers here are going to be compiled and with the rest of the answers. Like when you guys do your dots at the end of this, we're really collecting a lot of this information. And believe it or not, I really do pay attention to this kind of stuff when it comes to where we're putting our dollars. And but yes, mental health, for sure. Addiction treatment, right? Recovery. We have detox beds, right? We have medication-assisted treatment. We need, these are all, if I was putting public health words in, that's what I would put in. Homelessness.
I was hoping one of you guys over there would put that in. I see one.
Juvenile mental health, right, yeah, juvenile support. More training, sure, we need CIT training, crisis intervention training, we need we need mental health and first aid, we need motivational interviewing, we need harm reduction strategies, right? We need, there was a story I heard of a guy who wanted to get into housing. And to get into housing, he had to quit drinking. He had to stop drinking altogether. Well, he was okay if he could just have a few drinks, like he wasn't crazy, that's all he needed to do. He was able to have a few drinks and still live a productive life in the housing place where he was at. That's a harm reduction strategy, right? Allowing that person to still do what they can do if they're not harming really anyone else and they're still able to function. Yeah, maybe they're not completely sober, but if they're able to still function and work in the society and not hurt anybody else, that's a harm reduction strategy. Some people don't really like that, and because of lots of different reasons, but that's one public health initiative that we are doing at CompCare is a harm reduction strategy. Okay, I think we have one more, and then I think maybe that's it. One more question?
One more question, and then they can open.
Okay, right. So one more question. Public Works, which, is obviously roads and bridges, and the infrastructure that really allows us to move products, to move people all through. So we do streets and safety. I think we have some on Ridge Road between 45th or 53rd up north. That's a pretty dangerous road. There's no shoulders. Ron, thanks for coming. Councilmember Ron Holber, everybody. Yeah. Yeah, better roads, water treatment, and we have, within Sedgwick County this past couple of weeks, with all the rain, I've received a lot of questions about township roads, the graders and all of the road maintenance that is happening on townships, and we as the county support townships. We don't do those things for them, but we are able to help them and support them when they need the help. And
Is that part of internet services?
Internet services, yeah, broadband. We have just, I don't know what year it was, maybe 2019, we had a company, Nextera, that came and wanted to put in a broadband line. And because of the setbacks and because of the regulation of our roads and how much space you have to have, they weren't able to lay their line because we could potentially come and cut their line if we're going to do maintenance on our roads. Well, my opinion is if they want to put it in knowing the dangers and knowing that the line could get cut, and if they took on responsibility for us, we're maintaining our roads and we accidentally cut their line, they take on responsibility for that. And our regulation says we can't do it. So we have to go back and maybe look at that so that we can be better partners, knowing that we have a lot of rural areas in our community, and we want everybody to be able to access things, and broadband will help us do that. So that's where we have to really rethink, right? Reimagine how our government's set up, because it's 2022. And if we want to be good partners with both the private sector And we need to figure out ways to do that together. Lee Lynn happy?
Keep Lynn happy.
Keep Lynn.
Where'd they go?
Keep Lynn happy. I don't know. We're
Lynn
just-
Packard and Jim
Lynn.
Weber do a phenomenal job for the county. They need to be praised
Yeah.
for everything they do for Valley Center and all of our districts. So if you don't know Jim and Lynn, they do phenomenal jobs.
Jim, yeah. Jim, he's great. I mean, they're all great. Okay, and then I think the last and final question is, oh, no questions. Do you guys have any questions or comments? Before we leave today, please get your sticky notes or your sticky stickers. This is, I really want to host a garage sale so bad. So these stickers are like, oh, I really want to. I'm having a garage sale soon, but we'll talk about that later. So, please, 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 do not limit yourself to one sticker per thing. It's like if you want to put the whole sheet on public safety or whatever, please feel free to be use as many as you like. But
So color doesn't matter, you just want.
there's no system. There's no system to what they are. Just walk up here, and if public safety and something on here strikes your fancy, or if all of these strike your fancy and you want to put a dot for every single one, please do. Okay?
You have to be Valley Center or?
This is for the county budget. So everybody in here is at the county. Yeah, so what kinds of questions do you have? I know we all need to get out. Oh, 3 goals. Oh, top 3 goals for the next term. Okay, my top 3 goals are, I want to make sure that ComCare, our crisis center, gets put in the appropriate position. We are the largest provider of mental health services, behavioral health services here in the county. And so I want to make sure that that gets put in the right place. I want to be in the room. I want to be in those executive sessions when real estate is purchased. And I want to fight for the place where it should go. So that's 1. 2 is to be able to really be innovative and be that one in the room, always pushing the boundary about how we can do things differently. I'm not saying we have to do everything differently, because not the whole system, well, the whole system is broken. And I'll just make a really bold claim. It is broken. It's just spinning and spinning and spinning. And when Lindsay put on here, we're having a little conversation about the price of government, right? A couple slides ago, back in Lindsay's presentation, and this is nothing against Lindsay, right? This has nothing to do with her. But the price of government is a little bit more than 84 cents per person. For some people, right? Because not everybody makes the same amount of money and not everybody uses the services. So some people are going to use more services, some people are going to use less services, and if we're doing it based on evaluations and the whole calculation, we need to figure out, just like you saw from the household median income for District 4 as a whole, was what? $50,000. For Valley Center, 70-something, right? So even in just this little chunk tonight, we've seen 2 different numbers. So that's the kind of thing that we need to be thinking about. Is government should be simple, effective, and cost less. And so that's what I'm going to bring, and that's one of my top goals, is to be in these conversations and ask why. I'm reading a book right now called Lean Behavioral Health. It's about King County Hospital in New York. It is a government-run hospital. They implemented the lean methodology of Toyota Systems, which is the car manufacturer, right? And so when you think about manufacturing and being lean and your processes, yeah, you should have these screws next to this because it makes it more efficient for your workers to build cars. But really, it is that plus a culture shift. And it is a bottom-up change. So that's why when people are like, well, Lacey's not in the office all that much. Well, I'm not in the office because I'm out trying to learn effective systems that will change. That's why I'm talking to people who were struggling with addictions. That's why I'm interviewing homeless folks on the streets. That's why I'm at the recovery center. That's why I'm talking to Mark for an hour one day, because I'm trying to figure out, because my brain, I see things a little bit differently. And I want to be that person in the room that says, hey, why? And then why? And then, I mean, the lean behavioral health models talks about you have to ask why 5 times. And that's one goal. How do you represent Valley Center residents? Anytime you call me, I'm here. I mean, I've been working with Brent for the past couple of years. We worked on, we have a water issue up north, right? And I can't really take a lot of credit for it, but Brent, he did a lot of it. But being available when you guys call and being available I love I think I'm gonna enter the pie contest next year.
Are you gonna outraise us? The city?
No.
I don't know about that.
No, I want to enter the pie contest to be like, show off my skills in pie making. No, but you know what? How can I represent Valley Center better? I guess that's the
I
real
can
question.
tell you as the mayor of Valley Center, you've represented us 100 million times more than your predecessor ever did.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm serious.
Appreciate that, Mayor.
You talked about the flood thing is a classic example. We went nowhere with that. You can't.
Well, that was a dual effort, but I appreciate that.
It's a dual effort when 2 parties will sit there and talk to each other.
Yeah.
It's not a dual effort when one party's talking to a brick wall.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. I get that. Okay.
I have a question.
Can we switch out mics? Can you go back?
Earlier, you said that there's a 30, if I heard you right, you said there's a 38% rainy day budget at this point. The requirement is 20, but you have 38%.
Roughly,
Is that
right?
And if I understood you correctly, you were saying you could take, that there's some flexibility in that. Some of that money will be needed because inflation is going to take its toll. But some of that money might also be tapped for other programs. Right?
I'm saying if there's 3 votes and if we think about things in a different way, could we potentially start shifting the way we spend funds? Another example, and this is not a popular one, and I need to talk to Adam at Exploration Place, and I will talk to him, but they get $2.2 million out of the county budget every year, right? And Exploration Place is incredible. They are booming. They are blowing up. They are, under Adam's leadership, they are really, really doing some incredible things. The numbers alone, when they were doing online learning through COVID, I mean, those numbers were impressive. That guy is really doing some things, which could mean bringing in additional revenue, which mean could we take $100,000 from their budget and give them $2.1 million to fund something else that is a prevention method that could reap 4 additional dollars? Those are the kinds of things. They're not popular probably, but if we want to do things, we're just, what's the definition of insanity? Keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. I was just thinking right there in my chair, like, how do I explain what's happening to our government in golf terms or baseball terms, like batting averages, or like, seriously, I really want, because I keep thinking that I'm saying the same thing and I don't know that people are really sinking it in, so I need to say it differently. I need to try and say it so that people will understand what I'm saying and then hit them in their heartstrings that maybe they'll start paying attention. What other questions do you have?
And also just one comment for your presentation. You gave us an average income. Average income isn't very helpful. Median income is very helpful because it tells us where most of the people in the county, what they earn, and that, or in this district earns, and that gives us more of a sense of, are there great disparities? Are there huge disparities? How much, and where are those disparities?
Well, and the other thing, this 2021 assessed property value, could we take, a pie chart and see how many people fall in this bracket and how many people fall in, and chunk it out into brackets and see where the disparities might be. I live in 67214, which is a very poor neighborhood in this county. It's one of, if it's not the poorest, it has been the poorest for many, many years, and I think there is one zip code that has taken the cake now. But, that's where if you don't invest in places, that's what happens. So, thank you, Brent, for being here tonight. Thank you, Lou, Mayor, for being here tonight. Thank you, Valley Center, for opening this up. If you guys don't have, are there any more questions? We could be here all night, but I know we don't want to be, so. Yes, so please, I don't care if you've already put dots on, do it again. I'd like to see you guys all being interactive, and that's what we're here for. So I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you, Lindsay, for being here. Yeah, sure.